We are back, and Andrew and I are first ever signature move draft, where we're going to be going through the line of some of the best signature moves. Andrew, do you remember how signature moves got brought up?
I think I was watching something on YouTube, and it was talking about when I was a kid, I loved the Allen Iverson crossover, or I really modeled I used to try to do the MJ fadeaway thing. It was sort of like that thing.
Yeah, and I mean, those are some of the things you think of when you hear a signature move. You think of a certain player, if that's, like you mentioned, the Michael Jordan turnaround or the Michael Jordan cradle dunk, what I mean? Or you think of Michael Jordan's tongue out. Those are just a couple things that come to mind.
I think growing up, it was more of the Michael Jordan cradle layup for us.
Yeah, for us.
It was like cradle layup.
Right. We have to pick and choose our moments to do our cradle layup. There's been signature moves throughout the NBA. That's not just something that started in the 90s or early, late 80s with Jordan.
Oh, yeah,
If you go back to, the 70s and 80s, you have players like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with the sky hook. You have Magic's famous looking in a direction, doing a no-look pass. And even taking that a step further, Bob Cousy making flashy passes and doing stuff like that. Cool in the 50s and 60s.
The granny shot.
The granny shot. And when I think granny shot, I think of Wilt Chamberlain. And not only that, you have modern day players that like Carmelo Anthony doing his jab step over and over. Or there was a point in the early 2000s where everyone knew Tracy McGrady as the guy doing throwing the ball off the glass and doing a windmill dunk, which was his thing in all-star games at one point. So signature moves have been around for an extremely long time. And Andrew and I, we do try to brainstorm just a little bit for this podcast. And Andrew put up top 10 signature moves. And we took that a step further and said, let's make it a draft. Let's make it a game. Let's make it fun. And there's literally so many signature moves, which I didn't even realize. And it's kind of awing when you really think about when you could say a player and someone will go, oh, that reminds me of that player. I remember when I was playing some pickup, some people started referring to me as Carlos Boozer because I would do I would post up on the block and I would do a fadeaway jump shot. And when Carlos Boozer was big on the Bulls, they would go Boozer. I thought it was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and growing up, watching all those VHS tapes, I think there was one VHS tape. It was called NBA Signature Moves, and there were a ton of signature moves in that one VHS tape, and that was from the 90s. So,
name drop some of them.
Some of them I'll name drop. Kevin McHale's Slippery Salamander.
That sounds sexual.
Just to name. Just to name, but the rest of them I'll get to when we do our draft.
All right. Yeah, we don't want to reveal too much. So rules.
I'll give the fans that one.
So some of the rules of how this draft works, it's just like any draft that you do in 2K, but it's not a fixed draft. It goes back and forth. So it's a back and forth draft. No back-to-back picks, though. So if I have the first round pick, Andrew doesn't get the second and third. It'll go Joe 1, Andrew 2, Joe 3, Andrew 4, and back and forth. And we are going to keep going back and forth till we each have 5 overall players' signature moves. Also, a player can only be drafted once. So, like we said, Michael Jordan was known for his cradle, known for his tongue sticking out, known for his fadeaway, right? If someone says, I want Michael Jordan's turnaround shot, someone can't counter that with their next pick with, I want Jordan's cradle dunk. You could only choose a player once in the draft. We will ultimately, once Andrew has his 5 and I have my 5, we will put them on social media and let the fans decide. Andrew, who should go first?
Well, like they say in the Disney movie Beauty and the Beast, be my guest. Be my guest.
I love Beauty and the Beast. So you're giving me the first pick?
Yes, be my guest.
All right. So, all right, I'll take that. So, I mean, this one, I feel like if you went first or I went first, I'm assuming that both of us would have taken this. And I for the first overall pick for the signature move draft, I'm going with Michael Jordan's turnaround. Even you and I both didn't grow up in this Jordan era in the 90s, watching him and really taking it in. But even when we were kids, we would always do the turnaround jumper. And before people were going Kobe, people were going Jordan. You know, like that is a known signature shot, especially as we're watching this last dance take place and we're starting to get into the second three-peat when Jordan's turnaround is going to start to be known as his famous shot because he did lose some of his athleticism as he started getting older, but he developed this unstoppable mid-range shot in the post that so many people started to replicate and were able to relate to because they didn't have those physical attributes as these NBA players. It was one of the first moves that made Jordan seem real in terms of his skill and something that your average fan can relate to. Were you ever a person that did the turnaround shot like Jordan?
I've definitely practiced it before. The footwork is severely overlooked because it takes a crazy amount of footwork. Well, not crazy amount, but it takes really good footwork to nail this thing down. And I've done it a few times in pickup. I don't know whether or not it was probably the best shot to be taking or whether it was really needed. It was more of a, for me at least, a stylistic attempt. But being someone that's 5'7", I didn't really have a use for doing fadeaways in the post because I was never in the post. So I've never used it in an actual game, but I have practiced it before, and it is very difficult to make that shot. So shout out to MJ, the GOAT.
And really, if even for people who don't watch basketball, I feel like the Michael Jordan fadeaway is what's ultimately known throughout all basketball. Even people who don't watch basketball know about Michael Jordan, his influence to not only basketball but outside of basketball, and that's one of the first things that comes to mind. Andrew, do you have any rebuttals to my first overall pick?
No, that's a great first overall pick.
I feel like either one of us would have went that route. Andrew, the second pick in the signature draft.
I would have to.
You're on the clock.
You're
on the clock, Andrew.
I'll pick the second overall pick in the draft is Allen Iverson's crossover.
Interesting. AI.
The crossover that shook MJ.
Make your case.
I think Allen Iverson's influence on culture and being able to meld the NBA game into societal culture today was huge. And I think it started with his crossover. People think that it's like the cornrows and the tattoos and stuff. I think it has to do with his crossover because, again, he was able to shake MJ with it. And then he went and they in the NBA, they even had to change the rule for Allen Iverson's crossover because his hand was too much under the ball a little bit. Well, I shouldn't say too much a little bit, but it was like almost under the ball to make the crossover to the point where it wasn't really fair. And so so it's been known as the Allen Iverson crossover rule. And that move actually piqued my interest in basketball because I was trying to perfect this one move because I was all about, when I was growing up, I was all about trying to shake people, maybe not so much care about getting the basket. I was still very much entrenched in the street ball culture. with and one and everything. And I think the Allen Iverson crossover was one of those biggest, one of like the move that I did growing up, and a lot of other kids growing up too.
Definitely a cultural pick right there. Allen Iverson is definitely. I'm surprised by this being your first pick. The AI hesitation dribble. It really defines a moment in time for the NBA. The early 2000s, no one really seeing something like that. AI, who was listed at, I think they listed him at 6'3", but anyone could see that he was really about 6 foot, maybe even under 6 feet. And using that crossover, which was debatable if it was a carry or not, but really defining a generation. I myself had Allen Iverson shoes at one point, Allen Iverson shorts that I recall wearing every time I played an NBA game. At one point, I would say like 7 years ago, people were really against Allen Iverson because the analytics were not on his side. But if you grew up in the early 2000s, you could justify Allen Iverson being a cultural phenomenon and really not letting the NBA get to his head and staying true to himself. He was really the lead of a generation. He led the league in scoring at one point, and he did it on these really below average 76er teams as well. And taking a team with was Mutombo on that team when they went to the finals, or did they still have Matt Geiger?
Both.
They had both of them?
Allen Iverson, Matt Geiger, Dikembe Mutombo, Aaron McKee, Eric Snow.
Was Matt Harpering on that team?
I don't know. I want to almost say yes. I think who else was on that team? Oh, so there's here.
Lynch, George Lynch, or something like that.
Oh, Todd McCullough.
Oh my gosh! So you could, just naming these players that we just did. He led this team to the finals, and these are a bunch of no-name players outside of Mutombo, and just veteran guys around him with Aaron McGee and Eric Snow. Just a player that represented a generation. Anything else on Allen Iverson, Andrew?
No.
Yeah, let's move on.
I think that speaks for itself.
So I'm up with the third pick?
Yeah.
With the third pick in this draft, signature move draft, I'm taking Tim Duncan's signature bank shot.
Shocker.
For those of you that don't know, Tim Duncan's my favorite player. And he is in the top 10 of most NBA fans' greatest players of all time. And a player that was, speaking of footwork, had tremendous footwork on the block, had great hands, had a nice 15-foot jump shot, and it really started to show the Mr. Fundamentals of basketball. 15 feet away from the basket, posting up, facing up, and then turning it into the bank shot that no one could stop. And at one point, you started getting all these tremendous dunks of Tim Duncan because everyone was so scared of the Tim Duncan bank shot that they would start jumping on his fake of it, and then you would get to the basket and slam it on people or draw a foul going to the basket. It was really one of Tim Duncan's go-to moves at any point in a game where he needed to establish himself or just get a shot off or just a guaranteed 2 points. And he was able to use that for different ways to get to the basket as well. Truly one of the most boring plays in basketball, but extremely effective.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Tim Duncan was a quiet superstar that dominated his era.
That's all you want to say for Tim Duncan? Quiet,
yes. He's a gentle giant.
He's a gentle giant. He he was far from gentle. He finished his career
He
winning.
was a monster. He is, but he was so unassuming.
I know, that's what made him great. And
I love that. I love how unassuming he was.
really a player that didn't have much spotlight or media attention, but I found to be one of the most fascinating players I've ever watched, because you're going to get players who are the Michael Jordan knockoffs, like your Vince Carter, like flashy dunks, or your Blake Griffin high flyers. And after they dunk, they scream, and it's like, you know what? I've seen this a million times, and it only goes so far. But when you have a player like Tim Duncan who's able to just score relentlessly off a bank shot and not show any emotion in the process and be called Mr. Fundamentals, and that's almost more intimidating to me. And it was a player that I was drawn to, and that move is definitely the best shot that represents Tim Duncan and very indicative of who he is. Anything else to add to Tim Duncan?
I think that's all I got on Mr. Fundamentals.
So for a recap, Jordan went first. Allen Iverson's hesitation. Tim Duncan's bank shot went third. Andrew, you're on the clock with the fourth pick. Who you got?
Some people know this move, and I don't know if a lot of people know who did this move. It's kind of a deep cut. It depends on who you are out there. I pick Sham God.
Oh, you know what? I did have this name written down. Make your case.
Sham God is a move that was so beloved, and it's still used today, and it's actually incredibly effective in today's NBA, depending on who you are. And he did it by accident in high school. He accidentally lost.
It was an accident?
It was either in high school or college. He was driving the lane, or he was going on a fast break. He accidentally drops the ball, and then he was able to snatch it back and just do, with the same right hand, he was able to bring it back to his right. And then the guy just went for it, and then he's like, oh, well, I guess I'll just... And people went nuts. And then a few years later, there's a ton of people doing it. There's a lot of players that I think Russell Westbrook has one of the best ones. Kyrie does it often. And there's a lot of... And even some big guys have done it. And
I'll just interrupt. You bring up Westbrook. That's one of my favorite highlights of Russell Westbrook. He does it, and then he makes it after he does it. And for fans who don't know Sham God's crossover, break it down. How do you do the Sham God?
It's so hard to describe what it looks like. It's basic. It's like you're faking a right to left crossover, or vice versa. Let's go with right to left. It's like you're faking. You're gonna go with a right to left hand dribble crossover, but instead of it getting to your left hand, you let it bounce once on the ground, and then you pull it back with your right hand. The guy goes for it, and then you're able to just keep going to the basket, assumingly. One
of the most unique moves of all time. And to kind of go off of that, you throw the ball in front of you with either hand, and with the opposite hand, like you said, you bring it back, and you could continue going forward, or you could turn it into a jump shot.
Right.
It was a very unique move, and often seen in pickup, or not so much in the NBA, mostly because they're running so much offense that players don't have the opportunity to pull it out. But one of the best plays. Did Sham God play in the NBA?
He did. He actually played a few years in the NBA, and he's actually I think he's still a skills development coach for the Dallas Mavericks.
I didn't know that. So he's still with the NBA, making his presence known.
Sham. The only person I know that's named God.
What about Jesus Shuttlesworth? Well, he's not named God, but
that's true. But that's a fictional character.
That is a fictional character.
Another great name, Side note: World Be Free.
Oh yeah. What about Meta World Peace?
I like World Be Free.
Yeah, I like World Be Free. What about Fat Lover? Okay, we're getting off task. Those are all NBA guys. So recap: I have Jordan and Tim Duncan. Andrew's taken two staples in the crossover world with Allen Iverson and Sham God with the Sham God crossover. Okay, so I'm up 5th overall pick, my 3rd pick. Let's see. I have all these names. You know what? I'd be a fool if I didn't take this. My big guys versus your crossover guys are just going to be insane.
The little guys.
Yeah, your little guys. With the 5th overall pick, I'm taking Dirk Nowitzki's one-legged step back.
That's what I had next.
Sorry, Andrew. I'm going to be taking your guys in your post. I'm going to be backing up, and then I'm just going to turn it into a one-legged fadeaway shot with a 7-footer.
You did take 2 of my post guys. You took Timmy and you took Dirk.
Oh, man. These are generational players. Really, Dirk Nowitzki, ahead of his times with being one of the first big guys and international players to come into the league and succeed, first of all. And then not only doing that, being a player that's 7 feet tall that could shoot and abusing smaller players and even players his side in the post by doing a fadeaway one-footed jump shot. And not only that, it's justified with him beating the Miami Heat in the finals as well, making that his name more popularized and that move justified as well. And you're a big Dirk Nowitzki fan. I heard your reaction.
Oh, huge Dirk fan. I mean, Dirk he's the guy that saved Dallas, brought them to 2 finals, had to beat a really, really good Miami Heat-led LeBron James team. And again, like you said before, one of the first international players, one of the first big guys to be a stretch 4 or stretch 5, really. And then he developed a really amazing post-up game as his career went on. And you thought of being this soft guy, but he really wasn't.
And to go off that, before he won his championship against the Miami Heat, he started to get kind of a negative reputation. Not about anything that he necessarily did off the court, but mostly what he did on the court. He wins MVP and then loses in the first round of the playoffs to the Warriors team led by Baron Davis, Steven Jackson, Jason Richardson, just a team that was kind of ahead of their time, and Don Nelson as the head coach.
Don Nelson, who was his former coach in Dallas.
Yes, that's true.
Steve Nash.
And he won MVP, and this ultimately had a change when they released who's the MVP of the NBA until after the finals, because this was one of the first times when the MVP was, what they used to do is in the first round of the playoffs, they would grant the MVP of the NBA within the first round, because you usually went to a player that was going to win in the first round. But this was the first time when a player won MVP but lost in the first round of the playoffs, and they couldn't justify it. And not only that, Dirk was was leading, I believe, the best team in the NBA at the time in the playoffs, and then this Warriors team knocks him off. And he really had to fight back to get his name established and justifiable again by winning that championship against the Miami Heat years later. And a big part of that was his ability to shoot and his one-legged jump shot. Sorry for interrupting you, Andrew.
No, that's fine. No, Dirk is an amazing player, and I don't know whether we'll see that kind of a guy ever again.
Yeah, a guy that was definitely ahead of his time. Andrew, we ready to move on?
I'm ready to move on.
All right, number 6 pick. You already have Allen Iverson. You have Sham God. It's crossover. Who do you have with your 3rd pick overall, the 6th pick?
So, so you don't steal any more of my big guys. I'm going to take a big guy.
All right,
I don't know if you were thinking about this guy, but I was thinking about him. Darryl Dawkins, Chocolate Thunder. Chocolate Thunder.
Oh my goodness. I did not have this on my okay.
Get up and get out the way.
Darryl Dawkins, Chocolate Thunder. Tell us about the Chocolate Thunder.
So the way that I was introduced to Chocolate Thunder, I think, was at a basketball camp at our high school. We were in middle school, and one of the coaches taught it to us. And one of our good friends, shout out to Weston, he actually was one of the guys that could do the move really well. And I wanted to learn that move too, so I started practicing the Chocolate Thunder. Eventually, that's how I kind of learned how to post up. Was through this move. And
what is the move? Yeah.
So basically, you post up, and you post up on the block, and you do, first without having to do it in my seat right now, trying to imagine it, it's a face up fake. Really quickly, like you face and turn, you face towards the bat, you square up to the basket, you shot fake, and then as soon as you go to drive, you put the ball down and you spin the opposite way, and then once you complete your spin, you shot fake, and then I believe you go up with it.
Yeah, you do an up and under to finish it off, right?
Yeah, I think you're doing an up and under to finish it off. And basically, Darryl Dawkins was a player in the 70s to through the 70s, I think. Darryl Dawkins was making his name, and he played for the 76ers. He played against Magic in the 1980 finals, I believe, when they had Dr. J and Mo Cheeks.
Now, don't get me wrong, Darryl Dawkins, I do recall the move.
One of the first high school players to go to the NBA as well.
That's a good fact. Darryl Dawkins is known for before Shaquille O'Neal breaking backboards and breaking rims. He was known for breaking the backboard of. You could YouTube him, Darryl Dawkins, and you'll find many clips of him dunking and either ripping the rim off the hoop or the glass shattering. And he was one of the pioneers for this. Ultimately, them having to make a spring to generate force so it didn't go into the glass of the backboard, enabling it not to break.
Right. And he had this move called the Chocolate Thunder. I'm sure you can look that up as well on YouTube, and it's a pretty effective move if you can pull it off.
Good pick. I'll admit, I went through a bunch of signature moves. I did not have Darryl Dawkins' Chocolate Thunder on my list, Andrew. I even threw in some joke ones, and that didn't make it.
That one's a deep cut.
That is a deep cut. I definitely give you props on picking.
You would have had to attend a Rolling Meadows high school Mustang camp for that one.
And
that was
talked about a lot.
And you would have had to have been paying attention.
Yeah, you definitely would have been. I'm kind of shocked that you went Darryl Dawkins with your third pick. With the seventh pick, so just to recap, we have Jordan's turnaround. We have AI's hesitation crossover. We have Tim Duncan's bank shot. Sham God's crossover called the Sham God. Dirk Nowitzki's one-legged fadeaway. Darryl Dawkins' Chocolate Thunder. With the seventh pick, I'm gonna go modern. A guy who's only played 2 years in the NBA.
Only 2 years?
Yeah. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Who is this? I don't know. I'm trying to rack my brain. I'm still hung up on Darryl Dawkins' Chocolate Thunder.
Only 2 years in the NBA so far. He plays with one of your favorite teams. Plays for the same team that Dirk Nowitzki played for.
Oh, okay.
Luka Doncic's step back.
Ooh, that's a great move.
He was doing it in international play when he was a pro overseas. Comes to the NBA, people trying to convince everyone that he's going to be the best player from this draft. so far 2 years in, some people who are Trae Young fans might say Trae Young, maybe ATL does, but most people would say Luka Doncic is the best player from this draft, and he's doing it with his signature move, the step back. There's mixes on YouTube that only have his step back being performed, and it's truly remarkable. He's not the fastest player. He doesn't have the quick twitch muscles in him, but he somehow can generate so much space and separation that he could get a go-to shot. And this is huge for the modern era of basketball, being three-point shooting as well. And he's gotten so many open shots with this way, averaging 30 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists this year, doing this as well, leading a team into the playoffs when his team wasn't even supposed on NBA. People who were making their playoff brackets before the NBA season did not have the Mavericks in. Luka is for real. The step back is for real. That is my 7th overall pick. Andrew, what do you think?
That is a great 7th overall pick, just because, looking at Luka following his career since he was 16, and this is his go-to move when he was playing in Europe. And the skepticism around it was, even I was skeptical about. I'm like, I don't know if he can do that in the NBA. I know Luka's going to be good, but he's going to have to develop another type of move in the NBA, because you can't just rely on a step back. I mean, yeah, you're 6'6", 6'7", or whatever he is. You can't just rely on that in the NBA. You're going to need a lot more in your bag of tricks there. But time and time again, everyone knows the step back's coming down, like late in the shot clock, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, the step back's coming, and people can't seem to guard it. And Luka hits it every single time. It's one of those cliche things growing up when a coach would tell you, perfect one move and then use that and then just build off of it. And I think Luka's done that.
He would have finished arguably 4th in the MVP rankings this year. Definitely a player that he has a bright future, and it's only going to get more exciting down the line. Andrew, your 4th pick, the 8th overall pick in our signature move draft. So far, you've gone with AI, Sham God, Darryl Dawkins, Chocolate Thunder. I don't know how it could get any more random than this. Who is your 4th pick?
The next one is another crossover that I like.
Gosh.
It's another one. As everyone can tell, I like the crossovers a little bit. Tim Hardaway's killer crossover, also known as the UTEP two-step.
Okay, make your case.
So Tim Hardaway led Run TMC. Was it Run TMC? Yeah, it was Run TMC. It was Tim Hardaway, Chris Mullin, and I forgot who the C was.
Yeah, I don't recall.
I don't remember the C, but anyway,
I know the team.
He was on the Warriors. They had this really awesome fast break style, and Tim Hardaway, he had this great crossover where he would put it between his legs, and if you went between your legs to your right and you leaned that way, he was going to pull that dribble back in front of him and cross over and go to his left. And he would do it in a really quick succession, boom, boom, and he'd go right past you. He's done it to MJ so many times. He's done it. I think there's a clip of him doing it to Scottie Pippen, and it was a great, great move. And Tim Hardaway is one of my favorite players as well.
Really, one of the most basic crossovers, but something that wasn't being utilized, and no one's truly perfected it at this point of the NBA. This was during the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, like late 80s, going into the 90s when.
Yeah, so that was during the Larry Bird, Magic Johnson era, and if you look up any historian books or film, or if you even go on YouTube that wants to tell you the history of crossover, Tim Hardaway would definitely be one of those players that would come up in his 1-2 step. The really quick, stationary, dribble, boom, 1-2, show and go. Going to the basket at any point on the floor was an effective, and he not only had a good crossover, he had a good first step as well. His son's in the NBA too.
Yep.
Playing with Luka Doncic, who was my pick. But his son's currently in the NBA, also named Tim Hardaway. Really a player that I feel like a lot of people forget about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's a really solid pro, and you don't really see, a lot of kids like whose fathers were in the NBA be really solid pros or superstars. So it's really rare.
Anything else you want to add?
My favorite clip of Tim Hardaway doing this was against Charles Barkley, and then he does the move, and then he meets Charles Barkley at the basket, and he gets an and one out of it, and then he yells at him and says, "In your face." It's great. Look it up on YouTube. It's hilarious.
And not only that, he followed when it immediately happens. He goes, "Yeah, in your face." He pauses too. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's one of the most satisfying videos ever.
All right, moving on with the 9th overall pick. We each get one more pick.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm not gonna be. I don't want to be ignorant to the fact that I'm going to be choosing this because I'm aware of Hakeem the Dream Shake. I'm aware of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's signature hook shot. I'm aware of all these things. But if I'm making a team and I have Jordan's fadeaway, Tim Duncan's bank, Dirk Nowitzki's one-legged fadeaway, and I also have Luka Doncic, I'm going to need someone to protect my players. So you know what I went with? Rasheed Wallace Technicals.
That's a move?
That is his signature. He led the NBA in most technicals before they were doing suspensions. They had to make a rule for Rasheed Wallace and his technical fouls because they're like, we can't have players walking over anyone.
I can't believe that.
The Jailblazers, Rasheed Wallace, Dale Davis, Bonzi Wells, Damian Stoudemire, all guys on the skis.
Scottie Pippen,
Zach Randolph.
Steve Kerr.
At one point, Travis Outlaw, Ruben Patterson.
What a fitting name.
It was a fitting name. And they even made a comment when he got drafted by the Blazers.
Did you say Ruben Patterson?
Yeah, these guys were all representing.
You know what the name Ruben Patterson goes with, though? You know what he's known for?
Kobe Bryant, right?
The Kobe stopper.
He did say he was the Kobe stopper. I don't think that worked out too much for him, though. That didn't work out. But Rasheed Wallace, technical fouls, bringing the bad boy mentality to the Pistons eventually. A guy who was ahead of his time with the pick and pop, could post up, put the ball on the floor, and also get in your face and your head. Andrew, what's your take on this?
I didn't know that was technically a move. I guess it could be. I don't know whether – I guess that'd be kind of motivating for your teammates depending on how they take it.
When the NBA has to put in a rule against technical fouls, it is a signature of Rasheed Wallace. Ball don't lie.
I thought that would be more of his. Well, that's more of a catchphrase.
That's a catchphrase. Ball don't lie. Andrew, I have Jordan, Tim Duncan, Dirk, Luka, Rasheed Wallace. You have AI, Sham God, Darryl Dawkins, Tim Hardaway. Andrew, with the last pick to go with your guys, who is it?
I think this is a move that everybody knows, and it's transcended an era, and it has been stolen by other players.
Oh, wow, controversy.
I'm going to go with Manu Ginobili's Eurostep.
Oh, good pick.
And-
I did have that written down.
And
Make
this
your
is
case.
how I know it's his signature and it's his move. James Harden, I'm sorry, you can't claim it. Russell Westbrook, you can't claim it. LeBron James, you can't claim it. Nobody else can claim it because they did not come out with their own Nike signature how-to video sponsored by Nike commercial on how to do the Eurostep.
That existed?
Yes, if for all you fans out there, type in Manu Ginobili Nike Eurostep, and he shows you step by step on how to do it.
There are historians that will say that Ginobili wasn't the first person to do it. There were some players doing it in the 70s and 80s, but there was no really proof. There was no name for it. It's hard to really justify that they knew what they were doing and it wasn't just a lucky move going to the basket. Ginobili was someone who not only popularized it, but also made it a signature by doing it almost every game going to the basket. And it looks so different because Ginobili is a left-handed player. So not only was the move weird, it was backwards to most people who are watching it because he was going with it with his left hand to his left side so much. And Ginobili is a very underrated player and underappreciated player because he did come off the bench and didn't get enough recognition from fans and medias necessarily, but a very solid pick of the Eurostep going with Ginobili there, Andrew.
Mm-hmm. Can we do you have any other ones? Do you want to do some honorable mentions?
Yes, but before we do that, just a final recap. Joe's team. Jordan's fadeaway, Tim Duncan's bank shot, Dirk Nowitzki's one-legged fadeaway, Luka Doncic's step back, and Rasheed Wallace technical fouls. Andrew's team, Allen Iverson's hesitation crossover, Sham God's Sham God crossover, Darryl Dawkins' chocolate thunder, Tim Hardaway's 1-2 crossover, and Ginobili's Eurostep. Do you want to name a few of yours?
Sure. I have, like I mentioned before, if all you guys were listening, Kevin McHale's slippery salamander.
Ooh.
He had some other post names for his post-up games. So.
Before you continue, I just wrote Kevin McHale naming his post moves as a signature.
Okay.
He was known for having moves
for
with 6 to 7, 8 series of moves as well. And he was known for naming them.
That's true. Chandler Parsons' pump fake.
Good point. Go on. I had a long list.
You had a long list? Okay.
I did. And we didn't put them in our list, but Kobe Bryant did have a turnaround jump shot as well. Kevin Garnett was known for his turnaround jump shot. Scottie Pippen was noted for the bank shot before Tim Duncan, so I don't want to overlook that. Depending on what generation you grew up in, you might think Scottie Pippen. Tony Parker's floater. LeBron James' chase down block.
Oh, wow.
As I've mentioned before, Hakeem Olajuwon's dream shake. Mm-hmm. Kareem's skyhook. Magic Johnson's no-look passes. Jason Williams' elbow pass.
Ooh, I forgot about that one. Mm-hmm. That's a great one.
If someone does an elbow pass like for fun, that's the first person that everyone thinks of. Mm-hmm. George Gerving's finger roll.
The finger roll.
Dikembe Mutombo's finger wag after a shot block. Mm-hmm. Trae Young and Manu Ginobili's between the leg pass going through defenders.
Okay.
I did have Sham God. I wrote Bill Russell just to pay respect. I just wrote winning.
Winning.
Carmelo Anthony's jab step from 15 feet while facing up. Shaquille O'Neal dunk, because the turnaround one-hand dunk and then pushing his body into you. Steph Curry's pull-up.
Ooh, yeah.
This is a big one for pickup. Rajon Rondo's fake pass, like behind the back pass. Mm-hmm. Jamal Crawford's between the leg, behind the back drop step into a layup.
Ooh,
That's a
good,
famous one.
That's a good one. Jay crossover. Come on our podcast.
Yeah, Jamal, if you're listening to this, join us. And my last one, probably, you know what? I have two.
Okay.
Othella Harrington's post.
I was thinking about that one where he would face up post, right? Mm-hmm. And then the guy would have his hand like in his pocket area, like hovering the ball, and then he would just go up and like get fouled.
Yeah, he would draw fouls and he would score 8 points a game. I mean, no one would know that based off of if you really liked early 2000s Chicago Bulls basketball. That's the definition of a deep cut. But yeah, Othella Harrington's face up drawing fouls.
Okay.
And probably the most iconic move that's left off this list.
Okay.
Luol Deng's mid-range jump shots. Probably the worst shot you could possibly take. Luol Deng is the leader for this, shooting mid-range shot after mid-range shot after mid-range shot. And completely, you could just take one step or half a step to make a three-point shot. Luol Deng loved the catch and shoot mid-range shot. A player that lives and dies in the early 2000s to 010 area. I don't even know. That is probably the worst shot you could take, and Luol Deng made a career out of it, and it has fooled Chicago Bulls fans for so long with the art of the mid-range shot.
I got one more bonus one.
Ooh, okay.
This one I've adopted. I haven't done it in a while, but I adopted it into my game actually. And this guy actually did play in the NBA. He did have a stint for a little bit.
Oh my gosh!
It's a deep cut. Paul McPherson of DePaul University had this great move that he would dribble to the corner. He would have his back facing the defender. He would do a behind the back dribble. The defender would go for it, and then he would swing around and then just go baseline for a dunk or a layup. Paul McPherson, he played for the Phoenix Suns. He's from DePaul University. And
I was going to say, he was a Chicago guy. I remember this video, and I remember you doing this in pickup.
Yep.
That's
from the old Nike Battlegrounds video. DVD.
Yeah, that's what it was. I remember you showing that to me. I remember you doing that in pickup. I wouldn't have remembered his name.
Now, social media now will say, "Oh, it's Instagram sensation person Jenna Bandy calls it the rubber bandy," but she got it from Paul McPherson.
That I'm on your side on this, Andrew. I remember doing that. I still do it just for warming up because I remember you doing it. I still do it till this day. All right, we'll leave it at that. Fans will be able to vote on which team has the better signature moves, and we'll let you decide who's the winner. Also, please tell us. We gave some honorable mentions, but maybe there's just one that we just left off. Maybe it was Paul Pierce's elbow jump shot, or maybe something else. Yeah, something else of the sort. This is the Undrafted Podcast. Andrew, what are we?
We are Undrafted.